Appears frozen. Staff reports. Council, we are looking at the Southwest Middlesex 2022 operating budget. Kristen, I'm going to hand the gavel over to you. I remind council too that staff do like to have direction following these meetings so that we can move on. Following her presentation, I hope there's dialogue. And if there is direction that we can give to staff, I'm sure they'll appreciate it very, very much. It's our job to come up with those directions and staff's jobs to implement them. So go ahead, Kristen.
All right, thank you. I will just share my screen here to bring up the new presentation. All right. Is everybody looking at the operating budget presentation?
We are.
Okay, perfect. All right, so here's an update of where we're at right now. The assessment growth and change in revenue have not changed. We're down now with the changes that council has made at the previous meeting. We're down to 5.09% increase, which is 134.63 increase on a regular residential property, or $11.22 a month.
I'm only seeing that the main slide is. Are you?
Oh, okay, let me try it again. All right.
There
Are
you
you
go.
watching? Are you seeing them change now?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so where do we, how do we get where we want to go? So I've updated this each presentation. So if we want to get to 5%, we need to decrease expenses or raise revenues by 9,590. And you can see for each increment, the funds that we need to find. This slide here shows what the changes that were made at the December 8th meeting. So we began at a tax rate of 6.58, and we were able to reduce expenses by 150,000 to end up at a tax rate of 5.09. And the items here are the changes that council made. So really where we're at right now, or I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Council did approve the following 5 items during that meeting: the rescue truck, the land purchase in Wardsville, the work at the Main Street Parkette, the playground in Appin, and the development review coordinator position were all approved and passed. So what is, if we look overall at what's driving the increase in costs, to put it into a bit of perspective. So we have lots of significant projects in the budget this year. The arena upgrade is contributing 135,000 towards the increase. Wardsville outlet drains, that's a big new cost this year. Total cost of approximately $2 million. We've put 375,000 to be raised in the taxes this year for that project. The landfill costs, I think from what we heard in the presentation the other night, this might be just the beginning of the costs, but we have $1 million in there over 5 years. So we're raising 279,000 this year for landfill remediation. The fire rescue truck, playground equipment, land purchase, emergency generator, and the development review coordinator. So that's all in order of the total project cost. But the biggest new cost this year is in tax increment increase this year is the Wardsville outlet drains of 375,000 this year. So in discussions with the deputy mayor today, and then Greg and Jill and I, sorry, had a little discussion about this. We have just received from the province the 2022 OCIF funds that will be entitled to this year. They're not worked into the budget at all currently, because there's nothing right now being raised in the taxes this year for core infrastructure assets, and that's what these funds are meant to do. But another option that kind of came to light was in the sidewalk line for capital, we had put in 500,000 for sidewalks, and for the most part, the funds were being covered by gas tax and OCIF, but we were pulling 129,266 from a sidewalk reserve. Now, for staff, council had previously earmarked that in prior years for sidewalks, so I would only ever apply that to future sidewalks without getting previous council approval. But council, because they were discretionary funds that council elected to raise in taxes, they can elect to divert those funds to a different project. So you can elect to move it from basically from the sidewalk reserve to the recreation reserve, and then we can use those funds to apply to some of the projects that we're raising taxes this year to pay for those assets. And then we can use those new OCIF funds to replace the funds from the sidewalk project. I know that's a big, circle of basically moving money around, but what it would allow us to do is remove 129,000 from what we're currently raising from taxes and without any of the other proposed changes, and bring the tax rate down to 3.82%. So I was wondering if that might be a palatable option for council. So basically what you would be electing or voting to do is move 129,266,000 from sidewalk reserves to recreation reserves to be used for 2022 capital projects, and then using $129,266 from the 2022 OCIF funds to put towards the sidewalks. If council would like to discuss that now, we can do that before we move on,
Yep.
or we can go on to the rest of the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Kirsten. When was this information updated? When did the group?
About an hour ago.
About an hour ago. Okay, yeah, and I was unable to be reached, I'm sure, at that time. Okay. All right, this, Kristen, you and I had previous discussions in my office this week suggesting where we could get that. And our conversations were focused on these large ticket items that you had just mentioned. And if we're going to have to cut 6 figures from the budget, we're going to have to look at the big items, not the small items. And I congratulate you for bringing this to our attention in the last hour. It's good news. I'll open the floor for discussion. If we can go back to our screen. And I just remind council too that at the last meeting, staff had made some recommendations to lower the tax rate. We did not accept all of them. We accepted some and kept others in. But this may provide an opportunity to gain traction a little quicker. And we're not jeopardizing either a recreation project or a sidewalk project. It's just as a result of new monies coming in. So if you could give me back the screen, Kristen, so I can see my council.
Yes, sir.
And we will open it up to some hopefully constructive discussion. Who'd like to lead it off? Is there any questions you'd like to ask? Yes, Councillor Vink, go ahead. And Martin, we're glad you're back with us.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. One item on what is driving the increase in costs, I've looked through the manual here, and it claims that we're raising $375,000 through taxes this year for the Wardsville outlet rates, but I don't see an item listed here anywhere that we're raising that kind of money through the taxes. We have facilities capital, different for landfills and for train deck, and I don't see anything for the outlet rates.
Martin, I think that's.
So I just wonder where this.
Martin, if the chair could just overrule you for a second. This, your question you're asking is a question I have as well. And I would like to present that to Kristen, but we're focusing on her proposal in terms of the sidewalk and the recreation and the additional funding notice that we got received today. So if we could focus on this conversation, and I would be very pleased to bring up the Wardsville item down the road. So hold that question. I'll give you lots of time to ask that, but I'm focusing on the proposal that Kristen is offering us, Martin, at this time. If we could direct our questions to that. Thank you, Councillor Scholdeis. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Considering we have such a large amount for sidewalks this year, would it be possible to include the Main Street Parkette in Glencoe as part of the sidewalk project instead of having it as a standalone project?
Yeah, Greg might have something to say about that. Greg, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, and certainly can, and through you, Mayor Allen, to council. It is one of the projects that we talked about with regards to the shifting of this money. It would be a $24,000 savings. We could incorporate some of the actual application of the sidewalk budget to the new surface there. That should not be an issue. Just would mention to council that it is a memorial park, and I will have to go through a process to work with that family to come up with sort of an agreeable design or a change there. But yes, Councillor Scholdeis is correct that if we had to resurface that, we could resurface that with the sidewalk budget.
Okay, go ahead. Any other? Thank you, Councillor Scholdeis. Any other questions? There must be some questions here. Yes, Councillor Bartlett, go ahead.
As far as moving the funds around with the OCIF, I think that does make a lot of sense, and it does make sense.
Mhm.
So if you're looking for a motion, I'll make a motion to do that transfer.
Okay, that's going to put us in a good position. Yes, Deputy Mayor, will you second that?
Yes, Mayor Mayhew, I'll second that.
Okay, Council, I'd like some engagement if you haven't had a chance to. Yes, Councillor Vink, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I'd like to hear the motion because I didn't quite understand completely what we're doing here.
Sure, no problem, Martin. You froze up on us a little bit there. And Kristen, if you could just apprise Councillor Vink of that, it'd be great. And Councillor Vink, I clearly understand why you need clarification on that. You froze up on us. Go ahead, Kristen.
Sure. The motion would be to move $129,000 of sidewalk reserve funds to the facilities and recreation reserve to be used against 2022 capital assets.
Okay, and Kristen, if you could just tell, following that, if that motion is accepted, what would that bring our? Could you advise Martin what the tax rate increase would be? I think it was 3.8. Was it?
3.82. It would bring the tax rate increase down to 3.82.
Okay, so we're heading in the right direction. Okay, Kristen, I'll continue. Yes, Councillor McGill, go ahead. And while Councillor McGill is addressing the chair, Kristen, could you calculate what the effect on the tax rate, the average tax rate would be while we do that? Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Mark.
How much total OCIF funding are we getting?
Jill or Kristen can answer that. Yeah.
I don't have the file right in front of me, but it's over 700,000.
So if we're using whatever this figure is towards, yeah, what are we doing with the rest of it?
That will So usually what we would do, because we get the information so later in the year, is we would just use that to go towards additional road. It can only be used for core infrastructure assets. So roads, bridges and culverts, water and sewer, and sidewalks, basically. Did I already say sidewalks?
Yep.
Can I ask one more follow-up question?
Go ahead.
Mayor Mayhew?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, and as far as the sidewalk goes, we ran into a problem this year of tendering it out in July. Only got one tender, so we didn't proceed. So the plan was to tender it out early in the year. Now I see we have a budget meeting tentatively scheduled for January and another one tentatively scheduled for February. At what point could we tender the sidewalks out? Because I feel that the sooner we do it, the better. So we get some contractors bidding on it.
If we, pending approval on this, that may have a reflection. Greg, would you like to address Councillor McGill on that question?
Well, and I would defer to have Kristen or Jill respond as well, but I wouldn't think we could tender it out until the project was approved through council.
Okay. And yes, Jill, go ahead, please.
Yeah, typically, unless usually you would wait until the entire budget is approved, but you can also approve all of the capital projects to proceed and then approve the operating budget. But staff wouldn't be able to go to the market until either the capital budget is approved or the entire budget is approved.
That presents an option to council, but we'll see. We'll see how the motions end up. But that can be a question that the chair will ask council if you'd like to proceed with that. Councillor McGill will have that option available to us. Councillor Scholdice.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Can some of the OCIF funding be used towards the Wardsville outlet drain?
I don't think so. No, because it's not a capital asset in the same way. It's not a core infrastructure asset.
Okay, thanks. I just thought you said water and sewers was part of it, but
it is water, like water line, like
not storm.
Not diversion of water. Yeah, not stormwater, like actual water and sanitary.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Kell.
You had mentioned through the chair to Kristen, you had mentioned that the OCIF usually comes later and you attribute it to larger projects later in the year or to offset things that come up. Are we using last year's OCIFs in next year, and are we borrowing from next year for this year? And does that mean we're cutting people short for next year's OCIF projects?
That's a good question. So we, in the budget, the way it currently stands, has all of the OCIF that we physically have right now in that budget. The only thing we would be borrowing would be that $129,000.
Okay. All right. Yes, Councillor McGill.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Just a little more about the Wardsville outlet drains. $2 million with 375,000 being raised through taxes this year, which Martin had asked about, and I'd like to hear the answers to that one too. But how much of those Wardsville outlet drain job is going to be paid by the people of Wardsville? Because I remember when we approved it last year in the budget, we said we were doing it through the Drainage Act, which would involve landowners paying some of the cost.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We will have some responsibility, but I'll let Greg answer that. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Allen, you're correct. It would be done under the Drainage Act. And certainly the user pay system would apply. These particular numbers that are in the budget are for the local road authority, but you will find that in the creation of the outlet and the assessment of the project itself, that the county will also play a large role in this with their road system. And then if we do have other people sign on to the project, you know, obviously they would pay for their share as a user in the creation of the system. So yeah, that's kind of where that lies now. That particular project, we have had on-site meetings, so we do expect to get a preliminary design in the near future for that. So,
Okay. Council, there's a motion on the floor. Any questions in regard to the motion that's on the floor? If the chair could ask for it to be on subject, we'd appreciate it. We do have a motion. We have to deal with it. Any other questions? So everyone understands the motion. We're moving the pots of money around. Okay, the chair will, yes, Councillor Scholdice.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I just wondered if we were able to determine what this would bring the tax rate down to once we do this.
I think it was 3.8.
3.82.
Okay, thanks. I didn't catch that.
Yep. Okay, the chair will call the question. All those in favor of the recommendation by the treasurer, raise your hand. Unanimously, thank you, council. Okay, Kristen, that was a nice surprise. And
Yes.
normally we don't like surprises, but that's a nice surprise. At least the mayor doesn't like surprises at a council meeting, but that is a nice surprise. And perhaps I'll let you continue the conversation. As you know, staff, there'll be some councillors that may be happy with that, and there will be some councillors that may not, would like to pursue some more cuts in the presentations. So Kristen, if you could carry on in your presentation, and we'll evaluate each as it comes.
So I can let you know that the annual increase rate now, sir, because you asked, is $100.86 at 3.82% increase. And for Martin, as for your question on the claims of the Wardsville outlet drain, you'll see it in the Public Works expense line under item 2310 5776. And you'll see it's in there for $400,000, the total expense line, up from $185,000 in the previous year.
What section would that be, Kristen?
The Public Works expense.
What tab and section? We'll look at that.
I don't have the book in front of me. It would be in the legend in the front. Okay. You can see which tab Public Works expense is under.
Okay. Martin, you need a minute to look at that?
Yeah, go ahead, Mayor Allen. I'll just look it up.
Okay, that's fine. No, Kristen, we'll make some time. We'd like to get out of here by 5:30 if we could.
So I can assure you, Councillor Vink, it's in there, and it always has been.
Okay, and Deputy Mayor Wilkins, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mayor Mayhew. So my question is to Kristen. Kristen, if we could take that $24,000 for the parquet, as Councillor Scholdice has suggested, and move it into Greg's sidewalk budget, what would that do to the budget?
Let's see here. So that would be taking another 24,500 out.
Yeah, Greg, I'll get to you as soon as possible. Yep.
That would bring us down to 3.57 and $94.47 annual increase for an average residential home.
Impact. Okay, thank you very much, Kristen.
And Greg, followed by Jill.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Allen, just a quick comment with regards to the parquet. The parquet isn't just about the side, like the actual surface itself. It has gardens, it has, a fountain, etc. With the resolution that council's already passed, that would still secure the $24,000 for this particular project. But as I said earlier, it's going to take some communication with the family to come up with something that works for everybody, but we still will need money. As part of our contribution to that project. So there really isn't a change at this point, but if council decided, because it's a $24,000 impact, to eliminate that, you know, we would lose our flexibility as far as, you know, transforming that particular parkette into something that works for downtown Glencoe.
I agree. You got retaining walls to do. You have the support of the rock. Yes, Jill, thank you for your patience.
Yep, thanks. And just to build on that as well, you can't, as Kristen has said, with gas tax and OCAF, it's for your linear assets specifically, and the rebuilding of gardens and beds, etc. Within that park, it wouldn't be eligible for some of those reserves that the sidewalk funding is also coming from. So there, that's the other part of the consideration. I think Greg touched on the rest of what it was I was going to note, so thanks.
Yep, thank you. And I was looking at that. Yep.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Okay, Kristen, we're always asking you to find more money and more cuts, but council, if there's any issues you'd like to bring forth or questions to Kristen, please ask. If not, Kristen, if you have something in your radar, we'll get to it. Councillor Scholdice, question to the chair through to Kristen.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. This is slightly off topic, but it's on the agenda here, and I just don't want to move past it. As far as the arena upgrades are concerned, I just wondered, is council going to have the opportunity to vote on whether we are still moving forward with these new prices?
I would, council always has the option of asking the chair for reconsideration, but we are, it is a fluid situation. You must remember that we have resubmitted an application and are awaiting a response from that to Councillor Scholdice. And when we get that response, of course, council will be apprised. I'll pass it over to Jill if she'd like to expand on that.
Yeah, Mayor Mayhew, that's exactly, you addressed that. The council voted on the transfer payment agreement. So really what it is about whether or not you want to continue to move forward with the project, you would have to reconsider the agreement that has been entered into by the municipality. So I guess if that's the question that Councillor Scholdice is asking, whether or not you are looking to reconsider moving ahead at all with the project.
That's correct.
Then I think you would need to provide that as a notice of motion or some kind of motion with respect to a reconsideration of the project.
Okay, thank you.
And that would that require a 2/3 majority, Jill? That would.
Well, if it's a reconsideration of the current transfer payment agreement, yes, that would.
Yep, I would think so. Yep, thank you. Just wanted to clarify that. One more question, Councillor Vink or Councillor Scholdice.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Does the reconsideration, does the fact that the price has doubled have a bearing on that reconsideration?
I wouldn't. I would. The intent of the motion to proceed or not would be the gist of the motion. It may be grounds for argument for the person putting that motion forward, but I don't see how it would affect the.
It's just those numbers aren't the ones that we approved when we agreed to that.
Yeah. Jill, do you want to address that?
Sure. Thanks, Mayor Mayhew. You're correct again, Mayor. The reconsideration would be on the motion to approve the transfer payment agreement. So it would be specifically going back and opening up that particular motion. And if you had enough votes to reconsider it, bringing it back to the floor. The estimates that were not a component of the transfer payment agreement as you've described it, is at least as I understand it. So the other consideration as well is that council, you've entered into an agreement with an architect's firm in order to undertake work to move the project ahead as directed and approved by council and the 2 other levels of government associated with the project. So you've also got an additional contract outside of that where you would have obligations regardless of the decision to move forward or not.
That's true. Yeah, and my concern too, we've already made an investment in this, Councillor Scholdice, and if that was a vision that council had and succeeded at it, we would lose a substantial amount of money. Kristen, Councillor McGill, and then the floor is back to you, Kristen, following Councillor McGill.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I've been looking for this $375,000 for Wardsville outlet drains. I know I saw it at some point.
Through you, Mayor Ellen, it's in the public works section of the operating budget. And if you look under the municipal drain expense and follow that to the far right column, you will see $400,000. That's where it's located. So it's in the operating budget under public works. Follow it about 3/4 of the way down the page. You'll see municipal drain maintenance. And there's the allocation there.
Okay, I found that amount, 400,000.
It's in there.
So does that mean that, how does that work? Does that mean there's 375,000 in there for the Wardsville project, and then there's another 25,000 for everything else in the municipality?
Yes.
Because it isn't really maintenance in my mind. It's more like a capital project because it's a new municipal drainage. But
the reason that I have, and a lot of treasurers don't put it in there in as a capital asset, is because we don't own it. So all the rest of our capital assets are owned capital, like equipment or assets that we own. This is just a large project.
First time.
Pardon me?
Oh, just a minute, Martin, just go on mute. Martin, I'll get to you in a second. Just let Kristen finish what she'd like to say, please. Go ahead, Kristen.
Yes, that's why I don't include it in capital. It's a large operating expense. It's not an asset that we own. It's just our portion of the expense for the construction. It's a jointly owned asset, I guess, between all of the landowners that would be on that, and that would represent our portion of the expense of that.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. Martin, any follow-up question on that, Martin?
Sorry, Mayor, I was disconnected and I didn't realize what was back on. No, I was just going to follow up something on the arena, that if we wanted to make a yacht change to what we were going to.
Yep. Yeah, Martin, first of all, because we had to resubmit an application to the ministry on the arena project, we're waiting to see if the project will go ahead ourselves. It's not out of the scenario that we may not get approval on the changes. So, and then the project will not go ahead. We would be at a loss for payment, but we will certainly have ample opportunity to discuss that. And that conversation will be forthcoming. Kristen, continue on there.
Sure. If council would like to continue looking at options for reductions, I can keep going with the presentation.
The chair would appreciate that. There may be some of your suggestions council may want to keep in our budget, and there may be conversation in other. I think what I'll do, I'll let you make that presentation on further reductions or any suggestions you have, and then we'll certainly open it up to council to see if they can give you some direction. Okay, so go ahead.
All right. I'm just not.
What slide are you on?
I can't.
Or you need the screen.
Oh, there it is. I was going to say, I can't find my slideshow in my, here we go.
Okay.
So these are the remaining capital items that now we'll be able to cover 129,000 of these expenses. We'll be able to reduce these expenses by 129,000, but these are the capital assets that are still in there, pulling some of the reserves, or I'm sorry, some of the tax rates. So if we, the grass cutter could come out of that, the diamond dragger, the train station deck and repairs, the radio upgrade, 129,000 of those will come out. And then we have staff and the service level considerations. So we've already approved the one staff position. So these are the additional 3. So our arena hours have increased, like we discussed last week, from 20 hours to 60 hours a week. So this actually removing this may not result in a cost savings if we need to staff at time and a half to cover these additional hours. So if the summer operator, we would need to remove some of our gardens if council chose to remove that position. And the public works position is really to look after the roadside and sidewalk weed removal. That seems to, based on the calls that we received last year, that seems to be a service level request of council. So these are the considerations that staff had put together previous to the proposal to move the funds from the sidewalk reserves to recreation. So we could fund insurance from reserves, reduce the radio upgrade costs, remove the public works part-time operator, or fund the Wardsville land purchase, with reserves as well. So as you can see, the biggest cost savings here would be using reserves, which is effectively what we're doing with the 129,000 for sidewalks. So it's really up to council what direction they'd like to go from there, whether they'd like to consider the individual items in the presentation, or make a motion to accept the budget as it currently is at 3.82, I'm sorry.
I think for the benefit of council, that recent presentation you just made is not that lengthy, and I think there's no critical urgency of time on December 15th to get this passed. And I'd like to go back to that capital item, starting with thermal imaging cameras. Council, we got thermal imaging cameras, we got master fire plan and community risk assessment. I must advise council that don't forget that the master fire plan is a compulsory objective of the fire department. We have to do this. And regarding the radio upgrades, that will be, to go to a digital format is inevitable. So whether we do that now or do it later, it will be required. Councillor Cowell, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Through the chair to Chief Sewell, I know that we have been working for a while on getting upgrades to the radio system, and it sounds like the county has finally supported that move. And we see this in our radio, in your budget item of radios. In the recommendation, there was the idea that we purchase half now and half next year. Can you tell me a little bit about how that would be feasible, whether it's something that would cause disparity between different units, half of the people having new, half of the people having old. Talk a little bit about whether or not that would be a conflict with the new system.
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Cal, I don't see, we haven't had anything specific for timelines to meet this deadline, and with a number of fire departments in the county, to have everyone aligned at the same time. So I'm anticipating that it's going to be over the next year or so to get to that point. So obviously I'd like to do all the radios, and when they came to Southwest, we're ready to go. We have been put in a great spot over the years by the purchasing from through budgetary and councils previous to me to be in a good spot. $25,000 isn't a huge amount of money to put towards a critical infrastructure items like our radios or the system. So I'm willing to work as a team with council, as well as my counterparts in Public Works and Parks and Rec and so on and so forth, to try to get to a common goal that it's a best case for the taxpayers. So my recommendation would be, I would like to basically get the radios, and then we move on, and then we're ready to go when the infrastructure is done for the digital system. But also I do see a time frame that we could implement this as well. So that being said, that would be the comments on the radio. As for the master fire plan, I just for some clarity, the master fire plan is an imperative document that I feel at this point with our neighbors that have completed a master fire plan, and we need to make sure that we're moving in the right direction and really dovetailing into the rec plan that was done last year, this is a great time. The master fire plan is not mandatory, but highly recommended. But the community risk assessment is a document that needs to be completed. And if you're going to complete that in a timely manner with all the documentation data we're going to need to do the community risk assessment, we might as well do the master fire plan at the same time. So that's my comments on both of them,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chief Sewell. And yes, I guess the point I was trying to make, the community risk assessment plan will dovetail in to the fire master plan. Okay, follow up, Councillor Kell, go ahead.
Thank you. Just as a quick follow-up through the chair to Councillor Sewell, I agree that the fire master plan, we need to do it this year because of the information that we've heard coming out of Stratford-Caradoc, and to have that opportunity to evaluate how it will impact our side of the road is invaluable. So I'm 100% in favor of the master plan. And I think too, one of the reasons how come we sort of looked at diverting it last year was to provide you the opportunity to have some time and experience in your role, which you do have now. So I do not want to see that coming out, but I appreciate your comments on the radio upgrades and possibly a phased approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kellum. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Councillor McGill, go ahead. We're focusing on that one slide of Kristen's there. There's a couple of areas there. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Can I make a couple comments about the fire situation while we're kind of on that?
Go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So I'm like Councillor Cowell. I really think this fire master plan is very important, especially after we heard what may be happening in Strathroy-Caradoc. And right now there's a fire hall in Wardsville, one in Newbury, and one in Glencoe. And if there isn't going to be one in Melbourne, we have to look at where our fire halls are located. And even though I voted for the land purchase in Wardsville, putting the money aside for that, I wouldn't, of course, want to be purchasing any land until we see how the closure of, or potential closure of, the Melbourne Fire Hall is going to impact where our fire hall should be in Southwest Middlesex.
Okay, yeah, I think the formulation of the plan will be a good resource of information to make such decisions. Any further questions, Council? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Since we're looking at this slide, I'm just wondering if Greg could make any comment at all on the grass cutter or the diamond dragger. And he probably did this earlier, but I think this is our 6th meeting and I kind of forget. So Greg.
Yep, go ahead. Thank you. And Greg, yes, we're focusing on those 2 items. Is there any suggestions you could give to council on those?
No, through you, Mayor, I'd like to make a couple comments with regards to the grass cutting unit. I mean, the goal there is, you know, the one that we have in place now. I spent more time pretty much in the shop getting fixed this year than it did out cutting grass. So, you know, we managed with what we had. We also found that particular unit wasn't as much of a commercial unit as what we required. So we're trying with this purchase to have something that can be operated that will cut down the time as well that we spend cutting grass, because this particular unit is used specifically in the Glencoe area, which cuts Project 2000, cuts all the different road properties that we have, cuts all our facility properties. So with regards to that unit, we wanted to make sure that we got the proper piece of equipment to get the job done, which would reduce our hours and increase service levels. The diamond dragger itself would be a new piece of equipment. We're using an old dragger at this particular point in these new units. Will help with the weed removal on our diamonds. And it would be used throughout the municipality where we have diamonds, so it just wouldn't be used in one area.
Okay, thank you. Follow up, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Greg, have we ever at all done any investigation into, or maybe it's not even possible, leasing commercial more?
Through you, Mayor Allen, to the Deputy Mayor, we did, you know, this summer we certainly did pursue at times the leasing or the renting of a piece of equipment that could help us when our unit was in the shop. And I know that my predecessor had done some work with regards to the leasing of a unit. It was very difficult. We could not get one this summer to supplement when our unit was in the shop itself. So yeah, I mean, we're looking at the purchase. You know, the thing has to be operated by students, so it has to be safe as well, and it needs to be a unit that we can get around town and get all these particular areas cut. So we felt that number in purchasing a piece of equipment was just more appropriate to getting the job done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Greg. Yes, Councillor Scholdice, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. This question is for Chief Sewell. The thermal imaging cameras, are they both for the Glencoe station, or is there one for Wardsville and one for Glencoe?
Through your worship, Councillor Scholdice, with the reason there's 2 there, we currently have one that is at Glencoe, and with the reduction of price with these thermal imaging cameras, it's prudent that both stations have a first response with having a tick camera on them for any type of rescue or fire extension. So there will be one in each station.
Good, glad to hear it. Thank you.
Okay. So maybe there's nothing to cut on this slide, Kristen. We might have to go on to the other. We look at the train station deck. We know that it is in critical need for repair.
I updated the slide really quickly to remove what we could fully fund from reserves to show it's still raising taxes. If you want me to share that. So this is after the $129,000 reallocation. So these are the assets that have not yet been approved that are pulling from the tax rate. So I think that, you know, the arena and the landfills are probably best left as is. So that leaves the thermal imaging, master fire plan, and radio upgrade that are pulling from taxes.
Okay. All right. We can do that. Any recommendations there? Just again, those 2 items that are pulling from taxes. You said thermal imaging cameras.
Yep, thermal imaging cameras, the master fire plan, and the radio upgrade.
I think there's consensus that we want to keep those in unless I've non-interpreted council's wishes properly, but I think that there may be a consensus. I say that with a very small question mark, that we want those left in. And council, please raise your hand if I've interpreted your chain of thoughts and conversations incorrectly, but we know that that investment on thermal imaging is being distributed equitably among our fire departments. And
Hello.
yep. Yes, Amy. Yeah, did I hear? Yeah, Krista, go ahead, Councillor Cal. Yep.
Thank you. I would propose the motion that we keep the fire master plan, the thermal imaging in the budget. However, based on the recommendation from staff, we reduce the radio upgrade cost to the $10,284 for this year and keep the remaining of the cost for next year.
Okay, that'll make a modest improvement, but we're heading in the right direction. Is there a seconder for Councillor Cal's motion? And the chair will call it again. Is there a seconder for that motion? A motion did not receive a seconder, so it will not come before council. It's defeated. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. So my question is to Kristen. Kristen, if we were to pull any of those three out and take the money out of reserve, which reserve would that come from?
Those would come from the fire reserve, but there isn't really the reserves to pull for that.
What's in the fire reserve without me pulling out my
There
binder?
is, I'd have to pull it up here. I think we're using what we can for the most part for these. It's just coming up here. And it might give me a hard time. I have too many Excel files open.
Yep. Well, we don't want to.
You can come back to it, Kristen. Once you have the information, we can come back to that, Mayor Mayhew.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. We may not want to deplete that entirely because there's always that unexpected maintenance that the fire department may come across through the year as well. So we certainly don't want to deplete that account down to nothing. Councillor McGill, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Through the mayor, can I ask Chief Schewel, when would you like to do the radio upgrade?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor McGill. This is in preparedness for the county to move forward. So it can be spread out over the year. I'm not anticipating that it's going to be a hard date that we have to be online. There is going to be a hard date down the line, but I don't see a hard date into the next year, but it's always easier to get better pricing with a quantity rather than 1 or 2 radios at a time.
So you want to do it in 2022 when the county does it?
I would like to have us ready to go when the county says we're ready to go. Absolutely.
Well, I would make the motion that we keep those top 3 items in the budget.
Okay, is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Scholdice, I saw his hand up first. Council allow a few questions. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Just a comment. This is something that we've been striving to get put in place for many years now. And I think when you think and look at the safety of your firefighters, first and foremost, safety of your community, safety of your neighbors, this is imperative. So I agree with Chief Sewell that when the county's ready, I think we need to jump on it fast. Thank you. Just a comment.
Questions from council? Seeing none, the chair will call. All those in favor of keeping thermal imaging, master fire plan, and community risk assessment and the radio upgrade in, please raise your hand. Okay, it's carried unanimously. Kristen, you feel welcome to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we've gone through this and there's not much else on this slide that we can really work with. So
You're right.
yeah, we'll continue on. Is there any other magic tricks that you could suggest to council here?
I think those are the magic tricks that I had.
Okay.
If council wishes to keep those 3 staff members in place, then we could use some of the insurance reserve to offset some of that increase in costs. If you had a target as to where you wanted to get to, would be my best suggestion at this point.
Well, we're, the chair does not want to influence council in any manner. I've expressed to you what my goals were. I was hoping to get a tax rate increase of just less than $100 or less than $100, I should say, and we're very close to that.
Yes.
But again, I'm not sure. It escapes me what is in that insurance reserve, and but that if it's sufficient, that would be good. Hopefully, the increases in cost of insurance have been reflected in the premium that you have submitted here. We have got those have been budgeted for, those increases. Yes, Councillor McGill.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I'm really not a fan of dipping too heavily into reserves. There's a reason for reserves. For example, the reserves were used this year for the water line on the main street of Glencoe. Previous councils added on a surcharge, and that money was put into reserve, and then it was used to upgrade the water line. That's the way reserves are supposed to be used. So to take a insurance reserve and use it to offset hiring extra staff in rec or public works, I wouldn't really be in favor of doing that. Through the mayor, could I ask Greg Storms how this summer operator in rec, having an additional temporary summer operator in rec, would affect our arrangement with Green Street Landscaping? I think I heard at one time he was thinking of not having Green Street maintain the Arboreta. Now, I did see them working out there this summer, and I thought they were doing a great job. But just like his comments on that.
Greg, go ahead at your leisure.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor McGill, and through you, Mayor Allen. The goal for next year with regards to the Arboretas is to have, somewhat of a change there. So we will still contract out expert services for the trees to make sure that our trees that we have put in now are going to live and carry forward. So the trees is one issue, and the facilities and rec department will cut the grass there and take care of those properties moving forward. We may have a little bit of path work that needs to be done by the contractor as well, but there will be sort of a dual effort now to take care of the Arboretas. I mean, we really wanted to get them established, and there was Green Street did a good job this year, but we would like to move forward and look after those particular properties ourselves.
Okay, council. We don't want to be stuck here. We want to keep moving on if we can. We have about another half an hour. Councillor Vink, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I totally agree with what Councillor McGill stated. I hadn't realized that it was already set in stone that the Recreation Department was going to look after the Arboretums. So therefore, I think we should retain Green Street Landscaping for the Arboretums. And again, I'd say that we should be getting rid of Strathburn Arboretum. We have 3 different parks right in a row. And, but if we're not going to, we should be hiring.
Well, Councillor Vick,
private,
remind you that some of that money
parks.
invested in there is not our money. It's CN Rail money there and Communities of Bloom money there. And they, you know, following a period of 5 years and trying to get those arboretums established, they handed the job over to council and we did that. But not all of the investment was municipal investment. There was outside money in that. Don't forget that.
Okay, Mayor Allen, but that has not too much to do with the maintenance. So I think instead of hiring a part-time person, we.
But that's not.
I think growing weeds is not the solution either out there. Turning it from parkland into just a road allowance is not the answer either. I don't think council would share your opinion on that, but you're certainly welcome to make a notice of motion in future meetings of that, but I don't think you'd get the support. Councillor Scholdice, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I'm just, whoops, my thing went down here. The temporary winter operator for the rec department, I think we've been told that we need to increase from 20 to 60 hours. Would council be able to get a copy of the current rental agreements at the arena so that we can see what is actually going on there before we make a decision?
It's an administrative parameter, but it's I hardly think it's necessary. I think we should be able to take the word. They can do a report. I would suggest that we ask operations manager to bring forth a report at a future date regarding information on revenues. Greg, can you add to that?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Allen. With regards to the winter operations position, it is an administrative move to support the actual use of the building, for one. Secondly, when we look at the historic numbers associated with the building, we're nowhere near what they were before as far as staffing is concerned. So, and the other point I will make with regards to the comment from Councillor Vink, the additional operator in the summer, or the additional in facilities and rec, wasn't created to take care of the arboretas. It was created because of an increased service level. And I think it's pretty well explained in Kristen's slide. It was an increase in service level, a decrease in volunteerism in the community, and that has no disrespect to the volunteers in the community, but we went through COVID, and it's a very difficult environment to have the same historic involvement that's occurred in the past. And Facilities and Rec is working and has been working over the last 6 months with our partners to increase the volunteerism in the community. So when we got or received all the calls and concerns from council with regards to the 66 gardens that we took care of, then we responded to that. But to make the connection that it's specifically about Strathburn Arboreta is not correct. And, you know, I would also make a comment with regards to the arboretas. We only get good comments from them. There are many people that enjoy them. We've used them in the programming for schools, etc. And we will continue to move those things forward in the future because that's what people wanted in the Facilities and Rec Master Plan. And the arboretas, one, are owned by us and are very, very nice pieces of property. And our goal is to take care of them, make them nice, and have those trees thrive in the future and, you know, represent our, you know, our Carolinian forests and in our properties well. So there is a plan to have them signed properly. We continue to work with county libraries on production of programs in them. And, you know, our goal is to make them nice for the people of Southwest Middlesex.
Thank you, Greg. Greg, I met Kristen and I had a chat about that. I said there should be a correlation between the surveys that we've done and where we're spending their money. And you're absolutely correct. The results of the survey indicated that people did want passive walking areas, things of that nature, parks, and that was substantiated by survey. Council, the conversations that are coming out of council are not really being directed towards, do you want this tax rate lowered? Or do I take it the council are satisfied with this. Some of the conversations are coming up not addressing the propositions that have been put forth in terms of acceptance of a budget, and are there areas that we can look at? Councillor Vink, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just one more comment, and this is to do with the temporary positions. We were told a few years ago when we had the reorganization that there was going to be a savings to the municipality, and all of a sudden now we have 3 additional temporary positions. So I believe we were misinformed at that time.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Vink. I'll remind council that comments are not going to reduce the tax rate for the taxpayers of Middlesex, Southwest Middlesex. Okay. Suggestions are. So we'll try to keep on focus. Jill, go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Mayhew. Thanks. If I can just respond, Councillor Vink, I think that the treasurer has provided you with information specifically related to the operational change and the impacts to that. So you have seen savings, you have seen that report. Did you have specific questions about the treasurer's report you wanted us to go through?
You're asking that question to me or Martin?
No, Councillor Vink.
No, thanks, Jill. I made my point. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, so Mayor, I just wanted to note that, you know, I think that what staff have shown and reported to council is that there was an operational savings as a result of the restructuring. So I just want to make sure that's clear. And if you had questions or any member of council had questions about that, we can address that.
Thank you, Jill. And Kristen, anything you want to add to that, please go ahead. Councillor Scholdice.
Thank you, Mayor May. Just to follow up on that comment, I'm just wondering, why were we not notified that we were going to be doing these additional hires at the time of the organizational restructuring?
Again, we can pursue this conversation. I'm not sure how it's going to affect our mission today at a budget meeting, but we will be terminating these questions on this subject, and we can ask for staff reports to come forth at a later date, so it won't preoccupy our budget time. Jill, I'll allow you one more response on that.
Well, I saw Kristen had her hand up as well.
Okay, thank you. Kristen and then Jill, go ahead.
Sure. At the time of the restructuring, we could not have foreseen the duration of COVID and how that would impact everything, the additional cleaning measures and the additional staff time that would take place in the arena. Also, we had no way to foresee that the gardens that we were responsible for taking care of would double as a result of the volunteers that were no longer able to take care of the gardens that were being taken care of prior to the restructuring. And added to that, correct me if I'm wrong, Jill and Greg, but there seems to have been an increased, based on the calls from counselors over the past year, it seems that your service level has increased. So our response to that is to offer solutions to keep operations where counselors seem to want them.
Yeah, thank you. And I could add to that too, that our arena revenues have gone up through additional ice time, which I'm sure that we can substantiate down the road. Councillor McGill.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Mayhew. Yeah, I'd just like to point out again, though, that there was a cost saving to the restructuring. And for a councillor to suggest there wasn't, I don't know, it could potentially have us looking at another integrity commissioner investigation expense.
Yeah.
So we don't want to see that. And also I'd like to point out with the arboretas, we put them on 2 pieces of parkland that we already owned. So to my way of thinking, that was a reduction in the workload from what was originally proposed, which was to put the arboreta in Glencoe on land that turned out to be contaminated, so we couldn't use that site. And then the next proposal was to put the Arboreta on industrial land by the water tower, which would have been another site to maintain. We didn't go with that option. I think there was 7 councillors wanted to do what we did, and 1 wanted to use that industrial land as an Arboreta, which would actually given us another location to have to maintain and would have lost us a potential industrial site, which I think probably in the future we'll see that land used for an industrial use, which will be good for the tax base. So yeah, I'm fairly happy with the way things have gone as far as the Arboreta are concerned.
Obviously a difference of opinion there, Mark, but thank you for expressing that. But council, I want to get back on track. We have a budget meeting. Our purpose is to give recommendations to staff on how we can either accept the recommendations that have been made and adopt this budget or continue working on them. The chair has been criticized in the past for adopting budgets too early. I am giving you the opportunity to engage yourself in how we can reduce taxation, and that's what we want to be focused on. Councillor Scholdice.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. The comment of 60-some gardens has come up quite often. I'm wondering if we could have a report brought before council if there's any interest in reducing some of these gardens, because it seems to be taking up a lot of the working time.
It does, and so do reports. I think, Mike, some of those gardens are underneath the entranceway signs. There's hostas and containers planted in every entrance sign to the municipality. Very often it's the sign itself that's important. I think you're correct that these have to be evaluated. Staff are concerned about it, and I will, if it doesn't come forth, I'll certainly ask for it to come forth, that we have to set priorities on this. There's no question. Yes, Chief Sewell, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, just a comment in general in regarding to the budget is that I've been talking to my counterparts across the municipalities here and other counties, and I know there's more budget meetings that are planned into the new year, but with, and I hate to say it, with COVID and the way of getting in line for what we need to move forward, it's imperative that we're nimble as best we can as a municipality. I'm hearing out there that all these waits and I just want to make a comment in regards to if this is just a personal comment, if people are happy with where we're going, and I'm a taxpayer, not in Southwest, but I'm a taxpayer, and but to see it move forward in a nimble manner and make sure that we're in line for the services we need, it's imperative that council takes this for what it's worth, but we really need to be as nimble as we can as a municipality to make sure that we can get the services provided and get in line for these tenders that we need to get out there to get stuff done for 2022. So that's just my comments, Mr. Mayor.
No, there's always advantages to getting it done. Council, any further discussions? Kristen, you are the orchestrator of this budget very often. Is there any direction you can give the chair? We don't seem to be making any traction. I can adjourn this meeting, but I'm asking for questions. We've had a round of comments. Now, are there any questions or suggestions on this that we can make? Yes, Deputy Mayor Wilkins.
Mayor Mayhew, this is something I've been wanting to bring up for a few meetings, and I've left it till near the end. We have a ratepayer that has asked for multiple years if a privacy fence can go between the pool property and their property. Greg and I have had a discussion on this, and there's a few ways that it could be handled. So I'm just bringing it up tonight, and I'm wondering if before anything is brought forward, if Greg could maybe reach out to the property owner and try to figure out some type of a solution to their concern.
Okay, now, okay. We'll certainly make sure that is on the radar. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Again, I want to ask council to focus on this budget. Greg, I will ask a question to you if I might. Mark, I'm sorry I addressed Greg prior to your hand coming up. Looking for additional savings. If there are some among council who are not happy with the 3.82% increase, Greg, in order to get it down, and this question may be elementary to you, but the Wardsville Stormwater program is a very expensive program. Wardsville has had poor drainage for decades. What you have in the budget, what you have submitted, you have put money away in reserves to begin the accumulation of money to finance this. What period of time are you looking at? And my question is, can we extend that by a couple of years? Example, hypothetical. If you're looking at 3 years to put that money away to acquire the $2 million, can we extend that to 5 years to reduce the effective tax rate? Is there any merit in that thinking?
Through you, Mayor Allen, I take us back to the Drainage Act. You know, this particular project does fall through the Drainage Act itself. So I guess some of that timeline will depend on, you know, how quickly they proceed. But you know, this is just phase one of a number of phases of this project. So you know, pushing phase 1, 2, 3 years down the road is going to affect phase 2, which is the second outlet in Wardsville.
Yeah.
So, you know, and with regards to that particular project, council certainly knows that they did approve a stormwater master plan for Wardsville. And that document led into the petition that was signed by both road authorities and with regards to getting legal outlet for the roads in the Wardsville area, which will ultimately help the residents there. And secondly, we'll be able, the strategic location of outlet 1 is to deal with the development proposals that we have on the table right now for Wardsville. So
I realize that and we need that assessment, Greg. Too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I will add, Alan, in here. I mean, I think that I could respond, you know, with regards to the public works position, that temporary position that's in there. Like, we can live without that particular position. So that could be a tax savings if council was willing to entertain that. We would increase the. There would be a couple things that we would need to deal with. One would be an increase of sweeping in our hamlets as well as on county roads to get rid of weeds. That's possible if we just you know, if we ran more sweeping a couple more times a year to deal with weeds. And the second part of it would be that you know, I'm certainly willing to bring forward a policy that would you know, council could review and have a look at some involvement from the vendors from the downtowns as well, so that they would have an obligation to go out and pull some weeds from next to their buildings and sidewalks, et cetera, to make the downtowns look nicer. So there is that opportunity to have the savings for the public works position. It's not as critical as the positions in facilities and rec. And, you know, we would be willing to entertain some things that we could do in operations to make things better for weeds. But, you know, again, this is sort of an increased service level in our response to it. But like I said before, we would be willing to see what we could do in operations to satisfy that service level.
Okay. Well, the question, you know, does initiative advance or maintain our level of service in Southwest Middlesex? And do we want status quo, or do we want to address some of the complaints we've heard from our citizenry? And we all know that there was a substantial conversation on weeds in the summer. Anyway, council, any further questions to Kristen on how we could reduce the tax rate any further? Yes, Councillor Scholdice, followed by Councillor McGill first, then Councillor Scholdice. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I wouldn't want to see us reduce the tax rate by reducing reserves or increasing the amount of debt we take on. We're already in this budget taking on quite a bit of debt. Now we say there's no impact to the tax rate. But of course, there isn't when you do that in the first year, but then there's probably an impact for the 20 years after that because you have to pay that debt back. And that comes out of the tax base. So I don't want to be taking on any more debt than we already are. I'd be comfortable with the amount of debt we are taking on because we got some pretty big projects proposed. And I don't really want to be reducing reserves anymore, except for, say, in the case where in the past we've used an insurance reserve when we've had a really big increase in insurance. So we use the insurance reserve to impact that so you don't end up with such a big hit in the very first year. So that's just my comments.
Yep. As long as you don't constrain the availability of funds to move. Council experienced this early on in the meeting, that as long as you don't hamper an actuarial talent or policy, Mark, reserves are no question important, but reserves are money that we spend for unforeseen circumstances. And though they are headlined and put into various categories, if you have a redundant, if you have stabilization in one particular aspect of your municipality without cost increases, you may want to take that money. I just don't want to put handcuffs on the municipality or handcuffs on our treasurer to come to council to advise us of situations where we could, some people don't call it reserve, some people call it tax stabilization. And that is often a synonym to reserves. But I understand your philosophy in it, but I just don't want to constrain the availability of administration to make actuarial decisions. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. And I'm not sure if this was talked about at any point during the last 6 meetings, but, and I don't know who would want to answer this, any one of the 3 senior staff members maybe, but is there any grant available for summer students now that might be able to put that over to the temporary rec employee?
Yes, I'll have Jill answer that. I know staff administration are always looking for grants in that, and there is a historical, but Jill, go ahead and answer that.
Yeah, I think Kristen did a great job last year of getting some funding associated, but they do have very specific parameters around who is eligible so that they have to be in school as well. So I think we were really successful last year with some of the recreation programming. And Kristen did a great job on that. But it has to be someone returning to school. Is that correct, Kristen?
It depends. Yeah, it depends on the program at the time. I know years ago there was one very specific 2 students in a specific that they needed to be working in their line, like in their field. Yeah. This past year was much more open-ended, but it really depends on what grants are available. But for sure, we would pursue anything that we could. We did get just under $12,000 this year, which we used in part to keep Ashley a little bit longer.
Yeah, and if I could, Mayor Mayhew,
Ed.
I just don't think that you can guarantee it, because they were definitely trying to adjust things and have more flexibility with the programs at a federal level, which I think it was mostly federal programming that we were able to access. But it's not something that you can necessarily count on to get for a position.
Yeah, no, Deputy Mayor, there's no crystal ball. We can assume we'll get grants, but you can't guarantee it, and you cannot strike a budget on that. I do not see any. I asked council to put forth suggestions on the budget and recommendations to Kristen to obtain a tax rate base, and there's been a substantial amount of time spent on comments and inquiries, but not those recommendations. I asked when we first started this meeting that we give recommendations to our administration, and that's what I want. At this point, is it council's wish to have this go back to staff to see if there is additional reductions or evaluations they can make? At this point, at 5:33, is that your wish? If so, we need some direction. Councillor Scholdice, can you speak to that subject?
Thank
Yep,
you,
go
Mayor.
ahead.
Yes, I can. Considering the excellent suggestions that they've brought forward for this meeting, I wondered if we could go one more meeting and see if there is anything else that could be brought forward or found.
I think that's constructive. Is there a seconder for that? Is there, yes, Councillor Bartlett? Okay, we are asking staff, and staff, you can't do the impossible. We know that. But we are asking you to go back and do a further evaluation and to use your skills to come back to council to see if there is a little bit of fat we can pare out of this. And if your answer is no, we can't, fine. But there is a mover and there is a seconder. At this time, I will ask for questions. Councillor Vink.
Thank you, Mayor Al. I'm not really in favor of that. I'm more in favor of what the fire chief called Schultz indicated. I think 6 meetings is the most we've ever had for a budget meeting. And I agree with Councillor McGill that not to take more money out of reserves. We've already done some of that to lower the figure to make it look better. And I think we need to make a decision tonight.
Well, there's a motion on the floor, and I think Councillor Scholdice said one more meeting. And if that will take it, I think in terms of taxation policy, I can certainly tell you that I will support Councillor Scholdice's motion. But you're welcome to express your opinion. Is there any more questions? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Mayhew. I think to be fair to staff, we should probably get some idea of where we want this to go if we're to support Councillor Scholdice's motion.
Go ahead, Kristen. Just remind council that is council that instructs administration.
Mayor Mayhew, that wouldn't be Kristen. That would be asking every councillor what they're comfortable with, what they're looking for a target.
There's a motion on the floor. We'll deal with that and then we can bring that up. Kristen, did you have any response from this conversation? I thought that question was directed to you. Are you comfortable with the motion as it stands as our treasurer? Take one more look at this.
I am happy to do whatever council directs. It will be difficult to bring back recommendations, I think, that don't involve any reserves. But we can try. We can certainly try.
Well, there may be a difference of opinion from council on that, as councillors on that as well. 2 councillors have voiced their opinion on reserves, but we know that you would not jeopardize a department, okay, by making a suggestion. And we'll have to weigh that when we do it. But I too want this budget put behind us. This council have done an admirable job at closing the last couple of budgets early. And I can assure you that there are municipalities out there that are still working on theirs. And there is a motion on the floor to ask, and I did extend the courtesy to administration to say, we're asking you to look at it and to inform council if we will take your recommendations. If your recommendations are we're as tight as we can be, a council will have to evaluate that. But there is a mover and a seconder. We are meeting in about 1 hour and 20 minutes, 15 minutes. I'd like you guys to have some supper. Last call for questions. Seeing none. All in favor of requesting staff to take one more look at this? And if there's any clarification on the motion that's required, it can be read if anyone requires it. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? 2, 3, 4. All opposed? 1, 2, 3. Motion is carried. So we'll see you. And Jill, could you advise us of that next meeting?
In terms of,
Budget meeting, is the next scheduled budget meeting is when?
if you just look at the bottom of the agenda for future meetings for budget, we've got
Got it there. Yeah, January 12th, okay. So council, we are going to meet on January 12th. And the only other request that we could do before we go, I don't think we certainly can't approve a capital budget at this point because there will be some parameters there. It was talked about that, how we could get that sidewalk tender out any earlier, but that sidewalk tender is going to have to wait another 18 days, 23 days. So the motion was carried. We will look forward to seeing you on January 12th. And at that time, we certainly hope that we can have a budget that has been adopted. Council, any other business, any announcements? Seeing none, the chair will adjourn the meeting, and we'll look forward to seeing you at 7 p.m.
if we could just get a motion to have a confirming bylaw for this meeting.
Surely can. Yep. Okay.
So moved.
Seconder. Councillor Bartlett. Move that the confirming bylaw be signed by the CAO and the mayor. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Meeting is adjourned at 5:40.